My name is Henry Hoffman. I've never been one to share personal stories online. I don't even post pictures of myself, but this is something I can't keep to myself any longer. If I don't get this out, I think I might lose my mind. I haven't slept in 3 days. My body is exhausted, my eyelids heavy, begging for rest. But every time I close my eyes, I see asterisk and asterisk. His face haunts me, a relentless specter that refuses to let me forget what happened that night in the abandoned house. No one believes me when I tell them. They think I'm crazy. But I know the truth. I'm cursed by the spirit of a dead boy, someone my age, someone I knew. His name was Jack Howard, though after his death, people started calling him Black Jack. Jack and I went to the same school. He was quiet, too quiet. The kind of kid who sat alone at lunch every day, head down, eating in silence. He wore the same clothes all the time, a dark green t-shirt and dark red pants. His long, curly brown hair always hid most of his face, but when you caught a glimpse of his deep blue eyes, there was something hollow about them, like he'd already given up on life. I felt bad for him, sure. It was hard not to. But I never did anything to help. None of us did. He was just there, a ghost in the hallways, invisible to everyone except the bullies who tormented him daily. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I had my own life, my own friends, like my best friend, Michael. Helping Jack wasn't on my radar. And now, I wonder if that makes me just as guilty as the rest. Everything changed the day Jack stopped coming to school. Our algebra teacher, Mr. Anderson, broke the news with a cold, detached tone. Jack Howard won't be returning to school, he said. Last night, his house caught fire. The firefighters found his body, but it wasn't the fire that killed him. He was murdered. Someone mutilated his face and covered it in black ink. The room fell silent. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Jack had been murdered? Who would do something like that to him? He was just a quiet kid who kept to himself. He didn't deserve this. The news spread like wildfire. By midday, the whole town knew. The national news even picked up the story. Jack's family abandoned the house soon after, leaving it to rot in silence. A week later, they caught the killer. When I heard the name, my blood ran cold. Timothy Thompson, one of Jack's bullies. The worst of them all. Timothy had a history of severe mental illness, psychopathy, schizophrenia, delusions of grandeur. He was on medication, but that night, he'd skipped his pills. His twisted mind convinced him that Jack didn't deserve to live, that he was doing him a favor by freeing him from his misery. So, armed with a knife, lighter, gasoline, and black ink, he broke into Jack's house. He set the fire, stabbed Jack repeatedly, and mutilated his face so badly that he was almost unrecognizable. Then, he covered what was left in black ink and fled. Timothy was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison. But the damage was done. The town was left reeling, and soon rumors began to swirl. People claimed the Howard house was haunted, that Jack's spirit still lingered there, angry and vengeful. They called him Black Jack, a name born from the ink that had stained his face in death. The legend warned that anyone who entered the house would suffer the same fate. Michael and I had always been drawn to abandoned places, especially ones with a dark history. We loved the thrill of exploring the unknown, even if it was dangerous. So when Michael called me one Saturday and suggested we check out the Howard house at 3 a.m., I wasn't entirely surprised. But I was uneasy. Are you serious? I asked. You really want to mess with something like that? You've heard the stories. Come on, Henry, he said, laughing. You don't actually believe that stuff, do you? It's just an old house. People love to make up ghost stories. Or are you scared? I hated when he teased me like that. I'm not scared, I snapped. I just think it's stupid to tempt fate. I don't believe in ghosts, but I also don't go looking for trouble. Then prove it, he challenged. Be there at 3 a.m. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Later, I regretted it, but I convinced myself it would be fine. It was just an abandoned house, right? Like all the others we'd explored. Nothing bad would happen. I didn't tell my family where I was going. At 2:45 a.m., I grabbed my gear and slipped out the door. When I arrived at the Howard house, Michael was already there, armed with professional ghost hunting equipment like we were filming some kind of paranormal show. The moment he pried the door open, a wave of dread washed over me. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I ignored them. I stepped inside, determined to prove I wasn't afraid. I had no idea that decision would change everything.